Hey, everybody, you're listening to and watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Brian Pittard.
And I'm Steve Morey.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comics, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in, or in this case, stream in. And that's a bit of a misnomer tonight, because let me say that again. That's a bit of a misnomer tonight. Thinking of the future edits here, folks. That's a bit of a misnomer because tonight we probably won't get to too much actual comic book talk. We're talking about some TV shows that have a comic book connection and some books that have a comic book connection. But the last few days have been pretty busy for a lot of us, and not a lot of time to hit the funny books. But we still wanted to get together with each other, and we wanted to get together with you and just talk about things that are going on. So let's start off first with the fashion show there. Steve, let's see what kind of shirt you have on tonight.
I may have shown this one before, but it is my BB-8 shirt, but as the globe.
Ooh.
Okay. And let's get over to Brian. Brian, what have you got on?
So I have two reasons for wearing this. This is my Metroid Nintendo shirt. And I love Metroid, and there's been a lot of Nintendo stuff coming out lately. But the other reason is, of course, a little less celebratory, but more commemorative. This is from Nintendo World of New York City, and tomorrow is 9/11. So I was like, well, I don't have a lot of New York shirts. I have a Rick and Morty one with the Statue of Liberty from Comic-Con, but I was like, it's probably not the best one. So I thought I'd wear something from the New York City.
Okay. And for me, I had another shirt on, but I spilled some spaghetti sauce on it, so maybe you'll get that next week. So in a panic, I decided, let me get something very bearish. So this is the official staff shirt for Bear City 3.
Oh.
Yay!
In case you want to see me on screen for 33 seconds or so.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I'm going to go back and rewatch it.
Yeah. In the trailer, too. I flashed really quickly in the trailer to
What do you flash in the trailer?
I flashed by. You
Oh.
guys are gross. All you
Dirty.
porn.
Dirty.
You know, your dirty minds.
Lorraine.
I need to surround myself with people with cleaner thoughts and more wholesome
Certainly.
individuals than you two.
Certainly in the wrong company.
Disgusting. So, guys, I am pooped. I've had a short work week, but when we do have short work weeks, they tend to be very packed. And this is my second night in a row of working over 10 and a half hours. So,
Yeesh.
and I think because it is a short week, we're not going to have any kind of respite tomorrow. So I'm not looking forward to it either.
Yeah. It's been a lot this week as well. Just kind of carrying over from last week. It was just nonstop. So the Monday off was great, but then everything else.
I actually had Tuesday off, and I went to the beach, but I should have. I probably should have extended it to Wednesday too. But we'll muddle through it. So. The first thing I wanted to talk about is we did have I guess you can phrase it as a death in the family today with the passing of Diana Rigg. Now, I know I'm a bit older than you guys. Did you guys ever watch The Avengers?
Yeah,
You did,
absolutely.
Brian.
But only like, years and years later.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't contemporaneous either. Brother, I'm not that old.
I actually forgot when Game of Thrones happened and she was in that. I didn't even connect the two, honestly. It had been so long. But that's really. I mean, it sounds like she had an amazing life.
It's also a testimony, given that she was somebody who was a pack-a-day smoker. Try to avoid that stuff. Yeah.
Pack-a-day smoker. Seriously, just smoke every day, and you're going to live to 82.
But I do think that there are a lot of gay men that would hop over the fence for Emma Peel. I'm certainly one of them, I think.
She's outstanding.
Yeah. And when you think about comic books, the Avengers was such a touchstone at the time that it definitely had a big effect on comic books in the form of two particular characters, Wonder Woman and Black Widow.
Mhm.
Black Widow is basically wearing an Emma Peel outfit, and Wonder Woman had a massive recalibration in her book where they depowered her, and it probably wasn't the most sensible move, but it was a massive shakeup, and for many people that was their introduction to the character.
Yeah.
And you flash forward to a couple of years later when the Hellfire Club was introduced, and let's just say that Claremont and Byrne borrowed from a particular Avengers episode with the Peter Weingart as a guest in it, and there's a lot of stuff with the Hellfire Club and particularly the Black Queen that's basically lifted from that episode, and again another continuance of the influence. I was able to see her once on stage. I saw Medea on Broadway in '94, and she won a Tony for that. I never got around to My Fair Lady, which my friend Liz McCartney was actually in with her. And well, part of it is I'm not a big My Fair Lady fan.
Yeah, it never did it for me.
It never really did it for me. So I will say though, as an actor, I would love to play Doolittle. Especially as I got older. Her father. Because he has the two best songs in the show, and that's the only time he's on stage. So, I mean, that's a dream for an actor. Like the only moments you're on stage that you own it. So, that would be kind of cool, but I just never got around to it. And with celebrity passings, some hurt a little bit, and this one, for me, it's hurting because there was a period where I was just obsessed with the Avengers.
Really?
And was taping it at 3 a.m. and it wasn't airing while I was in any of the markets while I was in college, but it was airing in New York. And I basically taught my father how to use a VCR for the Avengers because they were rebroadcasting the episodes like something like crazy, like 2:30 in the morning. And there were very few edits actually with the ABC broadcast, so they would. So the episodes would be like 110, it would be like an hour and 10, where they didn't cut out any of the footage and just tacked on stuff for commercials. But it was not a welcome bit of news to wake up to today. So.
But we had a couple people in the chat here. David,
hello,
David and James. But David said Lady Olenna is a queer icon, which 100% agreed. And Emma Peel, of course.
Yeah.
But
and also remember she was a Bond girl too.
Yeah,
and
I read that. Which one was she, or which?
On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Secret Service. She was the one who actually became Mrs. Bond.
Yeah, she actually got him to the altar.
That's right.
And
woman, excuse me.
And On Her Majesty's Secret Service is the film with George Lazenby, who isn't bad if people watch it. One thing I will say though is if that movie was made with Connery, hands down that would get the rep as the best Bond film ever. Hands down, because there's so much going on. And there's one scene in that movie where it's the only time throughout any of the Bond films where you get the feeling from Bond that he's not going to make it, with the two assassins that are after him at the different angles. And I would have loved to have seen Connery play that scene. Yeah. So fare thee well, Dame Diana.
Thank you.
That was weird.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dame Diana Page.
It's funny because I think my first introduction to her was in Great Muppet Caper, where she was the wealthy, high society socialite, head of the modeling agency, random owner of extremely priceless jewelry for some reason that she liked to have on display. But yeah, I mean, she was a very interesting actress because she had such a great sense of humor, a wicked sense of humor that came through in the characters that she played, so that each character was really Diana Rigg but just played with just a perfect tweak to whatever era she was supposed to be representing or whatever type of role she was supposed to be playing. And yeah, Lady Olenna was Diana Rigg, just basically completely over all this bullshit in this fantasy world, just like, you assholes, like, whatever. And she was perfect. She was perfect for it. So, but yeah, my first introduction before seeing the Avengers in repeats was what was her character's name? It was oh gosh,
I
I can't even think. Yeah, I can't even think because I probably haven't seen that movie since it first aired on cable.
Yeah, I just know that Piggy was impersonating her to Kermit, and then of course they were in the same place at the same time, and it became apparent that she had been lying to him. That was that pivotal scene.
There's also a rock connection. If you know the band Elbow,
of them,
of them, and Guy Garvey's kind of a bear icon at this point. He is actually Diana Rigg's son-in-law. He's married to her daughter. Yeah. Tidbits that you can throw it.
The character is, I just had it, Lady Holiday.
Lady Holiday.
Lady Holiday. That's right.
Yes.
The character's brother, who was strangely American, was or half brother, was Charles Grodin. I think it was Charles Grodin.
What was I haven't seen Charles Grodin in anything in years.
Is he alive?
Beethoven ate him.
I'm pretty sure he is. I love Midnight Run to death. I love that movie. Oh my God, he is so funny in that movie. These things go down. These things go down. Have you ever seen that?
I have. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
I have not. And he is still alive. He is 85 years old.
Good for him.
Wow.
Hanging in there. No, it's a really, really funny movie with a lot of lines that my friend Pat Chiaffi and I, to this day, it's like, I'm Mosley. It'll just come out of nowhere.
The last thing Grodin was in was An Imperfect Murder in 2017.
Oh, not that long ago.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Before we get bogged down in other stuff. So we talked earlier when we were talking about tonight and how ill-prepared we were for comic. So we decided that we were going to talk about things that we were watching on TV and also what we've read that maybe wasn't necessarily comic. So I'm going to go to my good luck charm as always. First with Steve. Steve, tell us about something on TV that you're watching.
So on TV, and this is actually perfect timing because it just came back last week, is the second season of The Boys, which, of course, first season based on based on the comic book of the same name from Dynamite. It was a very interesting adaptation. If anybody watched the first season, there were some elements that were just ripped right out of the comic, and then others that they just whole cloth made up and just kind of brought maybe a more American feel to it because it is primarily an American writing staff and production staff. Not talking about the actors because the actors are from everywhere. But I think they did a really good interpretation of the source material. And in the second season, it picks up right after the first. I mean, we've got... I don't want to spoil too much from the last season if you haven't watched it, but the 7 has now been reduced. The number of the 7, the superhero group central to the to the plot, has been reduced in their numbers. One of them actually has been killed by one of the characters from the first series, and then we've had some very shocking developments with Carl Urban's character Butcher finding out the truth about his wife. And of course, we've had some other deaths from the first season that still carry over into the second season. Characters are all kind of in a very interesting place here. The boys are hiding out underground in basically in a Haitian gang hideout. And the Seven, of course, is trying to find somebody as a replacement for for one of their members who was killed. And that replacement, played by Aya Cash, is Stormfront, who comes in with a very great character. Had some great lines and very, very cool. But by about the third episode, we kind of see that maybe she's not all as great as she had seemed to be. We've got some amazing actors in this: Carl Urban, Anthony Starr, Jack Quaid, Aaron Moriarty, Chase Crawford, Karen Fukuhara as the female, who's fantastic. And absolutely, as an actress, she is nothing like her character, which is pretty fantastic, seeing the transformation between her real person and the persona and the character. And of course, Jesse Usher as well makes a comeback in this season. One of the great things about this is that Amazon decided to take an additional approach with this, and like AMC with The Walking Dead, have added an after show. And the after show is hosted by Aisha Tyler, who is everybody's favorite. Love Aisha. And she has, the benefit of having all of the actors or production staff as well. She's had special effects, the special effects engineers. She's had some of the producers and writers and directors on for the after show to discuss each episode after. And of course, when you're on a streaming service, it's pretty easy to just right there that you can click over to it. So some really great conversations there, some funny interactions. And of course, because it's not on cable TV, it's on streaming service, they're a little bit more wild in some of their comments and question and answer sessions. So I highly recommend it. If you didn't watch the first season, go back and you can stream the whole thing if you have Amazon, and I think overseas it's on Netflix. It's a great show, and the second season is starting off pretty great too. The first 3 episodes were out last week, and then it's being released weekly afterwards, so on Fridays. So
Cool.
I need to get caught up. I started the first season and then life, and I haven't come back to it. It looks like David Toby watched it. Thought it was really smart. And see, I remember the books I remember when the books were coming out in the comic shop, and I was being told that it was like the most offensive, the most crazy.
It is, yeah.
So I'm glad that they've. I guess I'm glad that they avoided
I guess that's from somebody who's never read.
Which one?
Oh God! Why can't I think of the writer's name at this moment? Garth Ennis.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's.
I see other books of his being so more offensive than The Boys.
Well, I think The Boys takes, a lot of.
I think if you're used to superhero comics, it's kind of a mindfuck.
Yeah.
There's.
The Boys, I think a lot of that is sexual in nature. So there's a lot of shocking sort of sexuality, especially in the comics, that they kind of pass over in the show.
I have read every Boys comic. I'm one issue behind on Dear Becky. I'm bored by it so far. I'm waiting for it to kick in. But I haven't watched any of the second season yet either. Hoping to get to that.
Again, it's more or less unique. I mean, the storyline, there may be some elements from the comics that have been incorporated, but most of it is fully new from the writer's heads. Show, which is great. They're taking the original material and they're interpreting it slightly differently. They're upgrading it.
So is it more of a difference, like with Preacher? Because Preacher they adapted pretty heavily, and it was like maybe not as successful. But this is doing, I think, more.
Well, I think with Preacher, I think they had the benefit of hindsight, and by jumbling around, because basically, like, the 7th trade is the first season. And I think that gave them permission to go off in different tangents. And, certainly The Walking Dead. I mean, there's very little alignment after a point. I mean, you'll have like the marquee moments for particular characters, but that has gone off in directions that the comic book never did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a good way of doing it. I'm surprised actually when you look at Amazon. Most of the sort of offensive and shocking moments for the show are all more or less in the gore. There are a few, non-gore intensive shocks that are pretty surprising from a storytelling perspective. But
that was the way the comic book was too, though. I mean, that moment when you realize, hey, the Twin Towers are still standing, and then got the backstory on that. That was a shock. Where it's like, it's okay, this isn't exactly your world.
Well, which makes sense. I mean, here's a world.
I'm sorry if I spoiled anybody that didn't get up to issue 51. I'm sorry. But
it's a world that's infested with super powered people. So, that's going to impact world events and everything too. And I think the show does a really good job of presenting that and presenting sort of the secret behind where these superpowered individuals are coming from pretty well. And it's very cynical. So there's some Garth Ennis thrown in there, but also, the production staff. And it's also produced by Seth.
Seth
Rogen.
Who co-produced Preacher as well. So this is another Garth Ennis adaptation that they've been working on. Same people. So. But yeah, I recommend it. I mean, give it a shot. If you are a huge fan of the comic, then hopefully you'll like the show. And if you're not a fan of the comic, or if you've never read the comic, you don't need to, because it's different enough.
All right.
Got some more comments here. Chris Wybrew from back earlier.
You
get the lobster, I'll get the steak, a little surf and turf. And then Tony.
Oops.
Gilkinson Compton.
Oh, okay. Hey, Tony.
Fourth episode
4. Yeah, I guess he thinks it's slower, more character-driven, but still crazy, like you expect.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's going to follow similar patterns to the first season, where there's, some pretty, top-loaded situations in the first couple episodes, and that slows down a little bit in the middle to kind of, really flesh out what kind of points they've thrown in, and then wild ride at the end. So probably going to be that way too this season.
All right. Let's go over to Brian. Brian, tell us about something you're watching that you're digging.
So I had the interesting pleasure of watching I'm Thinking of Ending Things on Netflix. And if you have not seen the trailer or you don't know anything about this movie, I am going to not spoil it. I'm going to try my best to paint the picture without giving away the thing, because there is a thing. There is a mystery. There is a core idea that is really best discovering yourself. But that's kind of the whole point of the story. So it starts off very straightforward. This woman is in a car with her boyfriend, a fairly recent boyfriend, and they are driving to meet his parents. And you get a lot of time spent in that car with the characters talking about various things like you would on a long road trip. And then a lot of stuff in the woman's character, who is just known as Young Woman. So there's more to that, but we're just going to call her Young Woman. Played by Jessie Buckley, who she looks so familiar to me, but when I looked at what else she's done, I've seen only things that were adjacent to that. So I don't know. I must have seen her in other, something else. But Jesse Plemons, who I always think looks like basically Matt Damon's thicker cousin, who I absolutely love in Fargo, second season, yeah, as Jake. And those two are mostly the cast. They're the two in the car. They're going to see the parents. The parents, who you eventually meet, they're played fantastically by Toni Collette as the mom and David Thewlis as the father. And there are other people in the cast. I mean, Oliver Platt is this voice that you get, and some other characters that I was looking up. But those are the main characters that you get to spend time with. The thing about this movie is it's not one you can put on in the background and just walk away from. And I know people, I mean, I've done that certainly with things on like Netflix or whatever. I'll just like walk away and come back. This movie demands your attention. And I don't mean it commands your attention, because there are definitely parts to it where you're kind of wandering a little bit. You're like, cool, they're talking about art and science and, oh God, what was another one of their interesting deep old Hollywood, like random tangents that you get a lot of dialogue, a lot of really interesting back and forth. But at the same time, you get this weird inner monologue from the young woman. This is her saying, hey, I'm thinking of ending things. And she is like sprinkling that throughout her, actual dialogue with her boyfriend. So that's weird enough, of course. Then you get to the house and you meet the parents and you see where this guy Jake grew up. And if you're really paying attention, you start to see differences that you might at first think, oh, I must have thought he had a sweater on and he's got a jacket. Or, oh, I guess the dad was a little older looking and now he looks younger. I may have misremembered that, right? But if you're really like tracking and paying attention, you go, oh, wait, no, these are not consistent. These are continuity errors. If you don't, the first one you see, you're like, well, how did that get by them? But the more that progresses, the more you start to understand that not everything is as it seems, and that there's this element of memory and recollection, and it's just sort of not a Rashomon storytelling show, but like variations in reality. Let's just say that. Unreliable narrator. But what's weird is the narrator is the young woman, and she's the one who starts to pick up on the fact that this is all very inconsistent and things are changing, and it gets so much crazier from there. Like, it's intense. I know some people have described it as sort of a psychedelic thriller. I don't know that I would prescribe it to be a thriller or a horror. Some people think it's kind of like a horror at first. There's certainly elements of all of the genres, but one of the most surprising genres is actually the musicals genre. There is some, and this isn't really a spoiler, but there is some amazing stuff from Oklahoma in this movie. And I have not seen Oklahoma in a long time. So I was like, oh yeah, okay, that's that song that she sings. Okay. Like you start piecing together. And then, again, saying much more will really start to spoil things, so I don't want to do it. But if you're not familiar with the musical Oklahoma, and I mean the musical, and not just the movie, you might want to go, like, just do a cursory, like, oh, yeah, that. Just because it really informs some stuff later in the movie. So, yeah, great performances. The parents are unhinged in certain ways that are fascinating. And even more so when you kind of get the gimmick, when you understand what's going on. Which very late in the movie, I think, will most people go, oh, yeah, this is what's happening. And even the ending is just like, what the hell? I mean, it's a Charlie Kaufman film, if you're not familiar with Kaufman's work. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is one of his screenplays. But he also did the adaptation with Nick Cage, which is
and John Malkovich.
And John Malkovich, of course. And so...
And Confessions of a Hitman, was that what that was called?
No. Synecdoche?
What the hell was that one? Oh.
I don't know. I'll have to look it up.
No. Schenectady and Anomalisa are the two that he wrote and directed before that.
Yes.
Right.
And he wrote and directed this as well. So, yeah. But all of these movies have certain gimmicks and they play with certain things. And this is an adaptation of a book. A fairly recent book from 2016 by a relatively unknown Canadian writer who had only done nonfiction prior.
Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. That's what it is.
Oh, did he do that? That's the one about...
Confessions of a Dangerous Mind? Yes. He wrote the screenplay for that.
I didn't realize. That's the one with Sam Rockwell, right? Oh, wow.
The Chuck Barris story.
That's so funny. I love that movie, and I actually been thinking about that because we talked about Fosse Verdon and I didn't know he read the screenplay. That makes a lot of sense actually. I really want to go back and watch that again. Anyway, yeah, great movie. Soundtrack's pretty good. There's some really interesting sort of intense music at times, and then again you get some of the beautiful music from Oklahoma. I want to talk more about this, but it's one of those things where I think it's really good to talk about this with friends after you've watched it, because once it ends, there will be a discussion of what did I just see? How did this just end? And what does it mean? Because there's a subjectivity to it that I understand from reading more about the book. The book is a little more cut and dry, but the movie, Kaufman's adaptation, really makes it a little more, not open-ended, but certainly a little more ambiguous. So go watch this on Netflix. It's like a little over 2 hours. It's not a movie, like I said, you can just walk around, but it's also kind of an intense film at times. So you might want to like strap yourself in, mentally prepare for the experience. And then I really would love to know what everybody thinks about it, because I think I hated it at first, and then the more I thought about it, I came back around like, no, okay, I see what they did. I mean, it's like you get it, but then you're like, oh, I don't like it. And then you think about it, you're like, wait, no. Oh, no, that's cool. And so I want to watch it again now, kind of knowing the gimmick and knowing what's going on and seeing the layers. So anyway, I'm thinking of ending things on Netflix.
All right, cool. Well, the TV thingy that I wanted to talk about is also Netflix, and very recently, and I'm not exactly sure what the date was, there was a bit of lag between when these episodes actually hit and when I had a chance to watch them. I want to talk about the 5th season of Lucifer. We do have all the major characters back. We have Lucifer and Decker and Detective Douche and Amenadiel and Maze and Dr. Linda. And it's really amazing how this show has had this like new afterlife. Apparently the numbers are fantastic, and they have split the 5th season into 2 arcs. So they have 8 episodes that are up now, 8 episodes that will be up later in the year. They did finish filming before COVID, so the add-ons are basically all VFX. So we will definitely be getting those later in the year. And it continues the arc from where we left off with Lucifer in hell and everybody else still in Los Angeles. Lucifer returns, but it turns out it's not him. And I'm not spoiling much because this isn't in almost every promo that they have for the series. It's actually his twin brother, Michael, who is also played by Tom Ellis, also affecting a non-British accent at points. And they took a lot of detours with this season so far. It's still, mired in the police procedural, and it always amazes me how well that aspect of it works. No, seriously, because that was the first thing when they announced the show. I was like, really? Police procedural?
Hey, but they also did the same thing with iZombie.
What?
They did the same thing with iZombie, and it worked.
but iZombie, with the conceit that they provided, that made a lot more sense from the outset. The highlight episode for me so far has been the 5th episode, which is an episode that takes place in the 1940s, where we get to see Maze's mother, played by the same actress. Episode's in black and white. They give Kellen Alejandro a lot of crazy shit to do in this episode. They play with the gender roles a little bit. And as a diversion, it's one of the nicer ones I've seen. Because sometimes when you do have an episode where people are, playing other characters, for a particular break in the action, it reeks of the actors having much more fun doing it than us watching it. This was a situation where if you were in it for the ride, you were having a great time. At the end of the 8th episode, again, that's where the break is between the 2 halves of season 5. We finally see someone. I don't know if someone is actually the way to identify them, but we see someone that's been talked about through all 4.5 seasons so far, and the casting is perfect. So that's nothing I'm going to spoil. I'm going to leave that for everybody to enjoy. But for a show that was canceled, straight out, and to have this second life on Netflix and to be in the level for it to gain the level of prominence as it has is one of their. I mean, since the show hit, it hasn't fallen out of the Netflix top 5.
Yeah,
it's just great to see, and it's weird to equate Lucifer with Resurrection, but hey, it works, and it's one of the more talented casts I think on police procedurals, and I'm very welcome. And I probably shouldn't have waited the few weeks that I did, but I don't know where you guys are on Lucifer. You have props. I don't have the 4th season, but I have the first 3 on home video. Look at that. Because I'm me. Doesn't matter if it's streaming and never going away. Gotta own it like this. Yeah.
I want to watch it. I had heard some mixed things at one point. So I might have to come back and check it out again because, I'm a little bit familiar with the graphic novels, and I don't know. I just procedural. I think I heard that too, and I was like, really? But I mean, I get it. Like, it makes sense.
They made it make sense. Yeah.
No, and I mean, obviously, I don't want to spoil anything for these people, even myself. But I think I saw the casting that you're talking about, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I like that. Good choice.
I watched the first 2 seasons when it was on Fox, and I enjoyed it. It wasn't my thing, my focus as much, and I'm not sure if it was just because it was a DC/Vertigo property, but it wasn't on the CW, and so therefore I wasn't even thinking about it most of the time. But I mean, it's good. I love the cast. The cast is really good. They're fun to watch. They interact well together. I mean, who doesn't love Dr. Linda? It's definitely a show that ticks a lot of boxes. Not necessarily something that I tend to gravitate towards.
See, that surprises me with you as Vertigo boy.
Yeah, I love Vertigo normally. And anything that's Vertigo property that they make into a show, I of course have to fall all over it. But Lucifer, for some reason, is not really something that constantly grabs me. I'm not going to turn it off if it's on. If Jason's watching it, then I'll definitely sit and enjoy it with him. But it's not something I turn on usually.
And there are some episodes on seasons, especially on season 2, which are a bit of a slog. Where the show seems to be just spinning wheels. There's a few very forgettable ones in the mix there, but they just found a groove that I'm so glad to see them continuing mining it properly. It's great to see. Yeah. I do have to say, in terms of comic books, the Mike Carey Lucifer is a hole for me. But I own it all digitally, so at some point I'll get over to that. I think I've only actually read the first trade, or the equivalent of the first trade in single issues. Also worth noting that Lucifer did cross over to the DC CW verse in Crisis on Infinite Earths for a couple seconds there.
Yeah. With
and it was really cool seeing him with Constantine. That was cool. I know, just from the dialogue, knowing that they have a history. So,
yeah, which was cool.
All right. So we also wanted to talk about something that we were reading, which may not be a comic book. I know in my case, it definitely isn't. So can we go over to Steve? Steve, what are you reading that you're digging?
Well, I've got a book that I ended up picking up from a particular sale that was going on that someone had to tell me about, and of course I blame entirely
just because you bought a lot more than I did. All right.
I mean, when the book
just to fill people in so that we're not being all cheeky, there is an outlet called Hamilton Books, and I never heard of this before. Chris Cummins sent this over to me, and he had never heard about it until the day before. It's something that's certainly mired in the like the discount trade sites that are out there, but there were some very deep discounts on this. HamiltonBooks.com.
Yeah.
And I guess, Steve, this is one of the books you got from it, huh?
Yeah. I spent quite a bit, a lot more than I thought. And when the box arrived, it was 40 pounds of primarily hardcover bliss. So one of the things that I picked up is a sequel of sorts, or probably another volume in the series by author John Morris. He wrote a couple other books. I actually own a copy of The League of Regrettable Superheroes, which is a great exploration of, yep, there it is, a great exploration of interesting characters created throughout the years in comic books, because we're coming on to about we're going on to about 100 years almost of comic books in their in their currently understood form. And especially early on in the golden age, there was a lot of creativity and also a lot of copying. And of course, in order to copy and still be able to publish without getting sued out of print, sometimes you had to be creative with how you were copying something wholesale and whole cloth. Well, the great thing about the superhero book is that it's hilarious, it's wonderful, but it's done with a lot of definitely a lot of enjoyment of the subject matter, and a love for the medium. Well, his one of his other books here that I picked up was The League of Regrettable Sidekicks. So take all of these superheroes that had their own books or were major headlining features, and then look at who they got glommed onto when they were looking to spice things up in the comics. And the great thing about this is that it's not just sidekicks, not just superhero sidekicks, but also he mentions henchmen. So interesting supervillain hangers-on that appear multiple times throughout a particular supervillain's career or comic book series. And again, he follows the same pattern. He goes through three major eras: the Golden Age, Silver Age, and sort of Bronze Modern Age altogether, up to the present day. And again, same thing can be seen. There's a lot of bizarre sort of throwing everything against the wall until it can stick. Golden Age craziness and wackery that happens. And you've got some really amazing ones. One of the oldest sidekicks that they have is Fat Man, who was the sidekick to Tex Thompson, aka Mr. America, who was one of the other stories in Action Comics #1, and had had several series or several issues that followed for multiple years. And Fat Man was his sidekick there. It's basically picture Ma Hunkel. This is a gentleman who's slightly portly. He'd barely be considered thick or husky today, but is wearing a lampshade, a flowered pattern curtain, and a pair of red union pajamas. And that's his superhero costume. He has no powers to talk about. He likes to fight with a broom and sweeps up crime. It's really hilarious and really funny, and they goes into detail of a character like that. But then, of course, we have some other more famous sidekicks that we know about, some less famous, but still with main characters that we do know about. He talks about Captain Marvel's multiple sidekicks, where the Captain Marvel family wasn't just Mary Marvel, Captain Marvel Jr., also Uncle Marvel, Dudley, Uncle Dudley, but there were other characters too, like Dudley's niece Freckles, so Freckles Marvel. There was also the Marvel Lieutenants, which were three young men who also had the name Billy Batson, and shared the powers of Shazam together. And their nicknames were Fat Marvel, Tall Marvel, and Hill Marvel, because he was the hillbilly. Just a whole list. And we all know Talkie Tawny, but do we know, oh gosh, what's his name? Magnificus and Buscia.
Yes, they were Savannah's kids.
were Savannah's kids that rejected
cool.
the evil ways and decided to help Captain Marvel and the Marvel family. And there's a joke in here where he's like, they got to be so numerous over the years through, basically from the 30s, 40s, for the 40s to the 50s, that they had to have a fight song, and it was basically a giant chorus worth of Captain Marvel sidekicks. From 1941 on, they just kept adding more and more to it. He goes through characters like Stripesy, who we know has had a reemergence of sorts with Stargirl. You've also got Woozy Winks, Plastic Man's relatively famous sidekick who comes and goes occasionally. It's the same goofy character. And then it goes up to somebody like Rick Jones, who's probably made his career in the comics as a sidekick more than any other potential sidekick that ever existed. He's been everybody's sidekick. He's been the Hulk sidekick. He's been Captain Marvel's sidekick. He's been the Captain Marvel's sidekick. He's been Captain America's sidekick. He's basically been the Avengers sidekick at various times, and has had a couple powers of his own, and they disappear and they come back.
Rom as well.
He's
Marvel's.
He's
basically in a sidekick role in Marvel. Rom. Yeah.
He's basically Marvel's party.
That's exactly it. Everybody everybody has a ride with good old Rick Jones. And then there's also some interesting ones too that I found. One was Gaggy, who is not a power bottom or a party bomb. Gaggy is one of the Joker's sidekicks from the 60s up through the 70s, and briefly made some appearances after Harley Quinn became a character in the comics. And Gaggy was basically he was a little person who had a false nose and who was apparently pretty vicious. So I mean, a lot of people were making a big deal of Joker's latest sidekick. I can't even remember her name right now. Pincushion. I'm not reading the Batman books, but I've seen her around. But here's Punchline. Here's one of his first ones, and apparently, even in the 60s, when things were a little bit goofier, he was still considered pretty dark and menacing for a sidekick, for a villain. And then also we had some goofier ones like Jackson, who, Bill, do you know where Jackson is from?
Is it Jaxxon?
That's the one.
That's Star Wars.
Yes. So yes. Star Wars created a random mercenary for Han Solo in the period between the movies when they were still putting out the comic and they had to do something.
Yeah, that's actually in the very first arc after the movie.
Yep. Yeah. So Jackson, of course, is a 6'2" green bunny character / mercenary who
is canon now.
Yeah,
from what I understand, they brought in a lot of that stuff from the Marvel series, with Valance the Hunter.
Yeah, apparently he's canon now because they have in one of the series, and I can't remember if it was Rebels or Clone. Yeah, it was Rebels, where apparently they find, or they pan over a landscape and his corpse is there, or like his bones in the suit, and it's like clearly a bunny skeleton with the. Yeah. Anyway, I guess he's canon now. But it's just really fascinating read, and some of the sidekicks are just ridiculous. You'd be amazed about how many boy magicians had some kind of fifth dimension genie or all powerful thing that would just pop up when they say a magic word and would do things and solve crime for them. It wasn't just Johnny Thunderbolt with Say You. It was any number of.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Are all of the books sold on this website published by Hamilton? Because it seemed like
No.
And in fact, this one right here is actually published by LRS QuickBooks.
Okay, because the comics that I looked through a bunch of them, they looked like an odd shape, and so I just didn't know if they were reprinting, or I didn't understand what the. Okay, so they're just a regular bookstore.
They're just basically remainder books.
Got it.
Yeah,
And some of the cuts were like the Marvel book I got. I think that was $7.99 down from 45
Oh
or
yeah.
so. Yeah, there's some very deep cuts.
Yeah.
Some Marvel, not Marvel, DC Treasury editions, the hardcover.
Yeah, it seems they're blowing off what remains of the archives.
Yeah, which is
And
it's
you
pretty
got
cool.
you got a bunch of the JSA stuff.
Dark
Yeah,
Squadrons. Yeah, I got a bunch of those, which is great. So there's a lot that's still probably there, but it's ridiculously cheap. This one, this isn't cheap because nobody bought it. It's just great discount when I got it, but it is hilarious. You'll have a lot of fun stuff, and of course John Morris he's a treat to read.
and just remember, there's also a precursor to this. If people in the heyday of Loot Crate, there's a abridged version of this that a lot of people have, but this is the full version. And it basically mines the same territory of sort of ridiculous heroes like Mr. Muscles and flipping over Spy Man, taking advantage of 60s crazes. So, and Morris is really good at mining that particular field. So, good stuff.
I mean, it's a lot of fun to read, and it's a lot of fun to go through a lot of these characters. There were several psychics that had the name of Phineas, or Peep from Jeep Comics. Peep is Jeep's sidekick, and Jeep himself is technically, I guess, Jeep's sidekick because Jeep is the flying Jeep. Anyway, it's ridiculous, silly, and a lot of fun. It's if you want a good laugh or just want to have something for quick reference on some obscure characters, it's good to have. So I recommend it. League of Regrettable Sidekicks by John Morris.
And the publisher is Quirk, correct?
Quirk Books, yes.
Quirk Books out of Philadelphia. Sexy city of Philadelphia. Okay. Let's go over to Brian. Brian, tell us about something that you've been reading, if you have been reading.
So I actually was thinking about it. I'm like, oh, I haven't been reading. But no, I have. I actually had to read. I chose to read Stuck Rubber Baby after we talked about the new edition.
Yay!
And this is, you can barely see. Because I actually got to sit down and talk to Andy Mangels about the life of Howard Cruz very recently. And Bill, I did ask the question you asked. I don't know if you heard the answer.
I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. Yeah.
The answer is he's going to have to get back to us on it. We asked, Bill had asked, like, hey, well, how many, what's the max number of orbs or spins that Wonder Woman does in an episode? And Andy's like, oh, God, I don't know. Anyway, we're going to come back. So we talked about Howard Cruz. It was, he thinks it's 3, but anyway, he's going to find out. We're going to come back and talk to Andy again, probably in October, about his Wonder Woman and some of the other stuff he's done, because we're really focused on Howard Cruz. So, to that point, I had not read Stuck Rubber Baby. It had been one of those books that I remember when it came out, because I was actually reading The Advocate, and he had a comic strip in there, I believe, Wendell, and then they were doing a book review for it or whatever, and I was like, I just didn't process what it was, and I think in '95 when it came out, I was in a position where, I mean, it would have been interesting. I just don't know if I would have appreciated it because I was very young, and also, I mean, I would have appreciated, I'd just been coming out very close to that time, so that aspect of the story would have resonated. But what's so amazing about this book is the cartooning and the content are just magnificent. And I have just come off of reading March, not that long ago, from John Lewis and various creators. And I, having 2 books, both dealing with the predominantly Southern civil rights protests, marches, sit-ins, and subsequent change, and then also watching Lovecraft Country, which is a whole other thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of steeping in this right now, and it's about time, honestly. This is not something I'm proud of, that it's taken me this long to really digest a lot of this, but I really am fascinated. And what's really great about Stuck Rubber Baby, Howard is not. It's semi-autobiographical. Like there's a lot of it he draws from his own experiences, being from the South, coming out with religious family and all the stuff that comes in, with that. Having a girlfriend early on, knocking her up. That's where the stuck rubber baby is basically. But he's honest. Like he's very honest. Like he's not trying to paint this rosy picture of him being a civil rights protester, civil rights anything. He's sort of stumbling into everything because of his relationships. And even the whole coming out is such a, for a lot of people, it's such a fits and starts kind of thing. You might kind of make some progress and sort of explore that, because you're interested in the same sex, but you may not commit to that, or you may kind of backtrack and say, no, that's not for me. And so it's a dynamic situation. And there's not, for everybody, there's not just that one singular, I'm out and I'm this now. You know what I mean? So all of that's there. The line work, like looking back at his gay comic stuff and Wendell, there is this like stylistic difference between that and what he did with Stuck Rubber Baby that is tremendous. And I just was blown away. I during the interview, I put some of the pictures up, and we talked about the art style and all that. But I mean, guys, I can't recommend enough. Get this new edition if you don't already have it. It is so important, and it's I would if I was teaching a comics history course right now, like 100%, that book is there, because of what it represents, both to civil rights and to queer comics, and then put it right alongside John Lewis's March, because the two just pair so well. So yeah, I love this. I'm so happy that I'm happy that it's been re-released. I got a digital copy, but I think I'm going to buy physical copies, which, if you're a longtime listener of this show, I have become far less interested in physical things, as much as my colleagues here tend to like. And even this book sale, it's like, oh, these are all interesting. Oh, I don't want physical book. I don't know. But
you put them somewhere after you get them. That's the problem.
And I mean, you can kind of see behind me, my shelves are a double, triple stack. But these are worth having physical copies for at the very least, having something to hand off to your friends and go, no. Here, read this. John Lewis, the March, like I want to buy for Christmas or whatever this year for holidays. I want to get everybody copies of this, because if they haven't read it, they need to. But then this is another one where there's so many things from my own life experiences growing up as a gay man in the church, or coming to terms with that, coming from the church. All of that resonates with me. Stumbling into culture, stumbling into civil rights again. That's kind of been my experience. It's not like I've been on the forefront of whatever, but I've had relationships, I've made connections that have brought me into those spaces more. And so I related to all of this, and it's great. It's great. So Stuck Rubber Baby, I feel like sometime when you guys have had a chance, I think we should circle back and do like a book report of it, because it's
been
important.
a long time since I've read it. I read it when it was first republished by Vertigo. And I think also when you're talking about comic book history for the time that it was under the DC umbrella, I think that was a very important development, to get a book with messages like this out there. I'm thinking back to the book, because again, it's been a very long time, but there's still scenes in the book that I can just conjure up right now. One of the most touching things in the book, I thought, was the discussion of curing his homosexuality and his whole relationship with Ginger, the folk singer, which led to the baby. And it's there was a lot about that particular relationship that really resonated with me, and my late start and all of this, and it wasn't. It was handled so beautifully in it. And the whole aspect of him getting more involved in the movements, and how much more accepting the Black community was of his homosexuality, being a force to change himself. It's a very powerful book, and glad it's out there. Now in a new edition. Yeah, so I think that might be a good thing to do in the future, Brian. Steve, have you ever read it?
Yeah, in fact, I do
okay.
have the newest edition as well, and it, in terms of what they were able to add to this for this anniversary edition, there's a great introduction by Alison Bechdel, and there's also several. I mean, we're talking like maybe 20, 30 pages of process that Cruise actually added. That show sort of how his art style evolved, information about how he built certain scenes, what choices and decisions he made when writing and growing the narrative. And there's also a lot of other additional essays and notes and words that are added from people who are, friends of his, family, people who were influenced by his work. So it's, it's really good. And of course, there is a touching, not just Bechdel's foreword, but a lot of the other bits of the book are pretty touching commemorations for him, because he did pass away last year before this anniversary edition was released. So, it's definitely great to have. It is a solid book and a solid read.
I was overwhelmed at first. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, this is so much. And Andy was talking about Howard's journey developing this and writing this, and how really until he had this, it was years, yeah. Until he had this, he didn't have a way to get attention. Doing the sort of strips and doing some of the onesie twosie works. He just this is the book that really gave him that title, or that role as the elder statesman of queer comics. So it was very important, and it's he got a lot of obviously great attention with it. But it's a fascinating. I don't want to sound like I'm saying it to sound whatever, but it was a good interview. Andy really gave a great perspective on his part of the journey too, talking about gay comics with an X, turning to gay comics, but specifically Howard's role as this mentor figure. And it's really cool because it's a more positive mentorship from a comics creator than we've heard of lately, with some of the stuff that's been in the news about various comic creators and their grooming and all that. So it was a really touching story that Andy got to share with us, and I was really moved, and it's good. So Howard Cruise is somebody who, when they do put out the queer or gay comics anthology, which I guess is sort of being worked on, eventually it'll happen. And the Wendell collection is out. You can get that now. The Barefoots collection. If you have a chance, any of Howard's stuff you should explore. But if you only have time, this Stuck Rubber Baby is the book to spend time with.
Cool.
Okay. Well, I read a book which is not a comic book and could not be farther from this topic. But as I said earlier in the show, I spent one day at the beach and I needed a beach read. So I got a memoir by Tony Tennille.
Oh my.
So if this is an unfamiliar name to you, Tony Tennille was half of the Captain and Tennille, which were an easy listening performing duo that were very, very 70s into the very early 80s, but very much a 70s yacht rock act, to adopt a parlance that's been retrofitted for a number of artists. And it details her life, going from for what was a very prosperous family in Montgomery, Alabama, to a family, because of the father's alcoholism, that found itself in pretty dire circumstances. She had met Daryl Dragon, the captain, when she joined the touring company for the Beach Boys. So she's been the one and only beach girl in their entire history as a live act. And then they got became a couple, and they broke off on their own and had hits with "Love Will Keep Us Together" and "Muskrat Love" and "Do That to Me One More Time." My particular favorite, "The Way That I Want to Touch You." So I know that people have seen me in Throbbing Gristle shirts, and I have some fairly aggressive tastes in music, but I like this stuff too. And it's dominated by conversation. It's dominated by her recollections of her time married with the captain. Daryl Dragon died last year, 2019, and despite their divorce and her moving away from Prescott, Arizona, where they lived, she eventually did move back, and she was actually with him when he passed away. But going through this, like, girl, I mean, it was a very distant and effectively loveless marriage. And you wonder why people stay in relationships like that. And when you are presented with a book like this, some of that makes a bit more sense. One of the events that she was known for in the mid-90s was taking over was doing the national tour of Victor Victoria, after Julie Andrews obviously just didn't have the vocal ability to do it anymore. Initially, Julie Andrews was going to go on tour for a year. It eventually fell to Tony to do that, and the life on the road that she details here it can be pretty rough for even established actors. And my favorite picture in the book, look at this, I didn't know this existed. That's her with Cary Grant in the dugout of the LA Dodgers game. But I needed something that was not necessarily breezy, but it was just something far removed from the other stuff that I'm normally reading. And I've had this book for a long time, and I don't know why I didn't pick this. Really go through this. And I probably shocked Tito with that, since this came out in 2016 and I haven't read it until now. If you want to get me a gift for Christmas, I wouldn't mind the Captain or Tennille Migo figures from 1976. Always wanted those. Shut up. I'm on my Migos. And this also is going to drag me out to the Captain and Tennille collection. Like a lot of artists, they had a variety series, lasted for a year. They also had some specials. A lot of that material is on here. So Tony Tennille is my girl this week. So that's my recommend, I guess. I don't know how many people really who are listening or watching this would really be interested in this, but it meant something to me.
Everybody's a Captain and Tennille fan, even if they don't know it.
Yeah. We saw her, Rob and I saw her play, what she had done, prior to, well, I guess concurrent with Linda Ronstadt and prior to a lot of other female singers, with these Great American Songbook concerts, where she would sit in with orchestras and do that stuff. And we saw one of those shows, and it was a fine show, but then she took a break and did some of the Captain Tennille material, and it was just her at the piano singing Muskrat Love. And it was just a cool moment. You're like, oh my God, there's the star. This was what the big deal was about. It was a really cool moment. And, so close to home with the War Memorial trend. So that's my book.
Cool.
There's a video of Tito and I singing "Do That to Me One More Time" out there, which is pretty funny. I kind of turned into Cher for a second.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Whoa. That doesn't look like Mae West. I don't know. So before we get to lists, is there anything? Oh, I wanted to mention something. I forgot to mention this. If you've been listening to the audio episodes of the Comic Book Bears, you'll notice I'm going back in time. I've been playing the previous theme songs. Again, for a long time, we have had a remix that I made of Papillon by Editors. And prior to that, we had Recollections of You by or Images of You, whatever the hell the song was by Baron Heaven, and then prior to that was Where You Get Love, right, by Matthew Sweet.
Matthew
And
Sweet.
the first theme song we had was You Got It Bad by Ocean Color Scene. So the current song is one by Yellow Magic Orchestra. Just you need to switch things up a little bit every so often. So before we instituted the new theme song, I just wanted to give you a taste of what. There you go. That matters as much to the people listening to this as the Tony Tennille book. So.
Deep cuts. It's okay. It's all right.
Deep cuts.
Before we get to Woofs, is there anything anyone would like to talk about? Did you get your Black Panther books on Comixology?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh.
Every single issue I could find, it went into my cart.
It was harrowing just getting all of them added. Like, it took a while, but it was well worth it. It also exposed the issues that app has.
Very, very much so.
But
I also noticed I do have Unlimited, Comixology Unlimited, and they do have a lot of the issues under Unlimited, so I can read it any time. But their choices on which ones were unlimited and which ones were for sale are sometimes confusing. So I threw everything in the cart that didn't have an unlimited tab next to it. So
why wouldn't you just throw it had an unlimited tab anyway?
Because in the app, and this is where the problem is, when you click on that, you do have to do it a couple times in order to get it into your cart.
Okay.
So it's not just an easy like tap.
Yeah, as somebody who basically the only service I have that's like that is DC Universe. Has there been stuff that's rotated off of Comixology Unlimited?
Yeah, but I can't even. I couldn't even tell you how frequently it happens.
And for people who don't know what we're talking about, there's over 300 free Black Panther comics as a tribute to Bozeman and other reasons. But go to Comixology if you haven't right now, and you basically have almost all of the Panther solo output. There's a few things that aren't in there, but it's a lot of stuff. And also like some satellite titles like Killmonger and Shuri are in the mix there too.
Now they are having a sale on the collected trades, just smaller discounts, but it's funny because you'll have the collected trade next to the entire series that's collected. Each issue is free, so it's only in a single issue. So you have to look at the single issues breakdown in order to get the free ones.
Yeah. I also love when these things go down and you're like, oh, there's 2 issues of X-Men that are in this. You let people know. I remember how harrowing it was with the when Scooby-Doo team up and the Scooby-Doo books on DC went free for that. And could only buy the Scooby Apocalypse on the Comixology website. And only as collections for them to be free. If you went to the app, it was so those get a little harrowing.
So David, I guess, suggested, and I don't know why they didn't do this. Well,
they did it later. They did it later. If you go to the free section on the Marvel app, they're all there now.
That was
so much easier.
I was going to say, as much as they're trying to make a statement and give it away and do all that, they don't want to make it too easy to just, hey, here's free content. They want you to work for it a little bit,
Yeah.
Hey kids, free comics, but we're gonna make you
work for it.
Jump through.
Second round of fandom. There's supposedly books that are going to be up for free, but I don't know if it's like the Comixology purchase for free or you can access DC Universe and read it even if you're not a member. I'm not exactly sure how that's working, but there's I think like something like 100 trades or something that are going to be in that this weekend. Including the debut of Milestone books.
Ooh.
To the service,
Yeah, when they announced that they were going to be bringing back Milestone characters, I was curious about that because obviously Milestone's output was in the 90s, the majority of it, and it'd be nice to be able to have that in the rest of the DCU app like everything else. So, yeah, cool.
The world's on fire. That's about the only thing I've got. Like literally, the West Coast. I'm sure
Yeah.
most people probably have been tracking it, but knowing people over here now who live on the West Coast, but also living on the West Coast myself, it is eerie and weird when you wake up and the world looks like the sky is on fire.
Yeah.
It's
I
making
mean, I saw a lot of pictures from people on the West Coast, and it almost looked like they lived on Mars.
Well, there's this great video going around of I think it's San Francisco mostly, and it's like drone footage, but it's set to the music of Blade Runner 2049. So it looks like basically the world of Blade Runner, specifically Vegas, where it's just this giant dust storm, orange sky. But tomorrow we're supposed to get all that here because that giant cloud of whatever is coming up to Seattle. So yay! I'll try to take some apocalyptic pictures if I can. But yeah, that's fun. Nobody had that on their bingo cards, I'm sure.
Well, probably not, but I think these days, if you're going to throw a gender reveal party, you've got to plan for a body count and a property damage bill in the millions and or billions.
One of the best memes I've seen was the Human Torch breaking through the glass and Marvels as the gender reveal. That was one of the better memes I've seen.
There was one that had the third impact from Evangelion,
yes,
Japanese manga, and it's gender reveal party, and it's the third impact.
It's gender reveal party is lit. Yes,
I mean, whatever. We're not going to preach. We're preaching to the choir, right? David, I didn't realize David was from Australia.
Australia.
Yeah, they had all of that. Seriously. I remember when that was the big story, and that was the scary, oh my God, what's going on with 2020? Yeah.
Until the Wuhan province said, hold my beer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus. Yeah.
With the times we're living in these uncertain times that we live in, it's this kind of thing where you couldn't make this shit up, I mean, with the revelations from Woodward's upcoming book, and it's every day there's something that is just, gives you the heart palpitations. It's too
multiple somethings that overlap and then hide. So you were already outraged if you saw it, but then if you missed it and you got the other thing, it gets the other story get buried, and it's just so much. I tell people, these are the most interesting times we possibly live in, or have for a while in history. But living through them is horrible. So it gives new perspective to the interesting times that have preceded us and what it was like for the people then.
Yeah,
exactly.
And thank you guys for the late start. I did want to get a decent amount of football time in with.
So how is football with?
Only one game. I don't know. I turned off the TV because I had to talk to you guys. But
I mean, normal.
Well, it depends on the team in the stadium. For my beloved Packers, for the first two games, there's no audience for the first two home games, and then they will. The plan is to start admitting the Lambeau Field to 25% capacity, and then as the season goes on, more and more people. They basically transferred the season tickets to next year. So it depends on the stadium, because there are certain stadiums that are taking the hockey approach, where there's just nobody in the stands and the seats are covered, and then others in the sections of the country where since this epidemic started, have been lax about restrictions, that you'll see more people in there. But I want to say that the Kansas City Chiefs were operating at 15% capacity, and I was also happy to see that there were a lot of people in the stands with masks, at least at the beginning.
Yeah,
there was one guy had a mask, drinking the beer, put the mask back, drank the beer.
I mean, I'm fine with that. What I can't stand is when you see pictures from restaurants or bars and everybody's sitting in their little seats without masks and not eating or drinking. It's why do you think you're magically protected at that moment? Like, I'm just
Yeah.
like, it's incredible.
In New Jersey, just this past Saturday or Friday, they started allowing 15% indoor capacity. And Chris Revicant, who's in the 11 O'Clock Comics orbit, asked, what the situation was, because I posted that, I'm really, with the games that aren't broadcast on what effectively is terrestrial TV. Rob and I go to this place, Tavern on the Lake, to watch the games, and there's a section that they block out for Packers fans. It's really cool. And not going to be doing that this year, even at that 25% capacity, I'm in a number of high-risk categories. I'm not putting myself through that.
Right?
Yeah.
It's
and I'd love to do it. I'd absolutely love to do it, but I just it's not.
Speaking of things I'd love to do, the trailer for Dune came out finally after a lot of people were like, "What the hell?"
Oh, that's the remake of the 1984 film?
Yes, the remake.
Well, there's actually a shot-by-shot comparison, which is kind of funny because Denis Villeneuve is a perfect director for this material. But I also think that having now seen the original Lynch one, or the Lynch one, the Sci-Fi Channel one, and the making of the Jodorowsky one, which didn't actually get made, there's only so many ways to cut this thing.
True.
I mean, Jodorowsky's is the most crazy. But what was really cool about the trailer is they use Pink Floyd Eclipse from Dark Side of the Moon. And Jodorowsky actually wanted and talked to Pink Floyd originally about scoring parts of the movie. So when I recognized that, oh my God, that's what he's doing here as kind of a callback or whatever, it was cool. It's so cool. But it looks great, and I am really concerned in some ways that I will be too tempted to see it in the theater, even though right now I don't think you could get me in a theater.
Yeah.
Maybe a drive-in. Hopefully they'll have it in a drive-in, but I don't even know if that'd be a good experience.
Yeah. Also, it was interesting with the pretty tame financial reception at the Tenet that it looks like Wonder Woman and Black Widow are going to be pushed back.
They're saying that about Dune as well. They didn't even put a date because they're
it's just in theaters.
At some
I've
point,
actually I've never gotten through reading Dune.
Really?
I tried reading it when I was 13, and then I tried reading it again after I'd seen the film, and they gave you if you saw the movie in 1980, it was 84, right? 84?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. They actually gave you a sheet of paper so you could follow certain things because, the cut had gone so far down. It was, I think Lynch's original cut was pretty long. And it was trimmed down to a 2.5 hour film, but they gave you a sheet with with background information so you could help follow it.
So my understanding is
there's the same thing.
What?
The TV edit that they added all that back in.
Well, right. So there's there's the Alan Smithy 4-hour TV edit, whatever, and then there's Lynch's original cut that was released theatrically that's around 2 hours, and then supposedly there's an even longer cut that I've never seen, but this is my I don't think this is original. I think it's a book club edition, but I've read all the books. Steve, have you read all the books?
I've read the first 2 books all the way through, and then was it because it's Dune, Children of Dune, God Emperor of Dune,
Heretics, and Chapter House.
Heretics. Okay, Heretics I didn't read. God Emperor I think I started, and then Chapter House I did read because I don't know. It's 90%. It's 90% appendix.
So evidently this is the original, and I just went back and or at least it's not saying it's not the original. It doesn't have any of the other stuff. But Chapter House and Heretics is rubbish. I think most people are kind of like. His son tried to finish the series because it didn't really have a good ending. Frank Herbert was going to write more and just never did. So they tried to end it, and those are garbage. Plus, they've also went back and made all these prequel books that are pretty much roundly thought of as trash. But let me tell you, God Emperor is the one that most Dune crazy people like myself, like that is like the high point. That is like, it's crazy. The first book, kind of has a nice ending. If that's all you ever experience, that's probably fine. But you go into that second and the third one, which they made the sci-fi series version of, which is really good.
It's
James
not bad at all.
James McAvoy, who we Professor X and a bunch of other people, plays Leto, the son of Paul Atreides, named after the father, of course. But like those are pretty okay. They're like a little weird. Some crazy shit happens, and but then that God Emperor happens, and no one's made it yet. So all I'm asking for from 2020 is that Dune does well, that they make heretics, that they make the children, and they get to God Emperor. And after that, I don't care. Because I'm telling you, God Emperor is just batshit. It's so good, but it's so batshit.
It's interesting hearing about the use of the Pink Floyd music, because Frank Herbert really hated rock music, and on their 1984 album "Peace of Mind," Iron Maiden, they wanted to name a song "Dune," because it was about Dune. It eventually came out being called "To Tame a Land." But the Herbert, who was still alive at that point, would not allow them to put out a song called Dune.
Interesting.
So Jodorowsky, if you have not seen Jodorowsky's Dune, which I think Bill, you've seen that, right?
Oh yeah.
Like,
oh, it's brilliant.
Nothing about his adaptation was really faithful or like he used it as a jumping off point for his own particular crazy. But what I really love about it is that it's like the Lynch one, as much as Lynch is a great director and a lot of his stuff is, obviously celebrated and whatever. Even Lynch is like, that wasn't my best effort. It's still pretty iconic. I mean, you get some amazing appearances by like Patrick Stewart as Gurney Halleck, with his giant balisette and the little pugs. Like, the beautiful cinematography. A lot of it's still great. Plus, what's her name? Who played Chani in that? Sean Young. She filmed, and I found this on YouTube. She filmed a lot of the behind the scenes from that production and has shared that over the years with some narration. That's fascinating too, just to see that inside look. But anyway, Dune is one of the things. I mean, one of my first screen names was literally Paul Muad'Dib. Like, it is like one of the books that is like etched itself in my brain. So, needless to say, I'm excited.
Okay. Or he is the Biznatch Hatterack. I'm so looking forward to this movie. I actually saw the original Dune film, Lynch's Dune, when I was like 6 years old. It was one of those like VHS. My dad had gotten it on VHS. I don't think he knew what it was. He was like, sci-fi movie. It might be cool. I watched it. I thought I fell in love with it. Like as a 6-year-old, I fell in love with this movie. So it has not just the cult enjoyment that I have watching it today, but also some like little memories of childhood. But yeah, I'm so looking forward to Villeneuve's version of this.
All right, Dune. All right, folks, we're going to wrap this episode up, and when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears up, we do something we call the Wolves of the Week segment, which is where we spotlight something which may be a comic book, but also may be a film or a TV program or a charitable initiative. This whole episode has basically been Wolves of the Week.
Yeah, basically.
But again, we always wrap up with something that we want to spotlight for you that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your Wolf of the Week?
My Wolf of the Week is probably one of the gayer things that I've talked about for a while. And it's just a general shout out to the massive empire that is Drag Race. So for those of you who follow RuPaul's Drag Race, they finished the 13th season earlier this year during quarantine, towards the beginning of quarantine of season 13. They, of course, also ran All Stars, and then just finished Drag Race Canada, or Canada's Drag Race, the Canadian version of the show, the first season, which was a lot of fun. There were a lot of things in there that you would have expected to see in maybe season 2 for season 3 of RuPaul's Drag Race. The wigs, some shitty makeup choices, but you know, that's neither here nor there. Everybody has different styles, but there is still so much more Drag Race, and basically you're only going at max about a week without a Drag Race something, and not even that lately. So what's airing right now, again with World of Wonder, you can get it, is RuPaul's Drag Race, and I think also on VH1, RuPaul's Drag Race Vegas Review, which is the sort of documentary, super crazy Real Housewives of RuPaul reality show version of the Vegas Review show that opened much earlier this year, and then of course had to close with COVID.
I think it lasted
Vegas.
a month because
Yeah,
we got
about a
there
month.
right. We went through Vegas on our way out to Seattle right when it opened, and that was like
Yep.
late January. And then by like early March, everything was shut down. So
Everything had to be shut down. So, but the documentary series sort of talks about the lead up to the actual premiere of the Vegas show, and then of course right up to the close is probably where it's going to end. Additionally, also starting tonight on WoW Presents or WoW Presents is God Shave the Queens, which is the British version basically of Work the World Tour, and touring around the UK, the queens from the RuPaul's Drag Race UK, as well as Alyssa Edwards, were also touring around the UK, and they had a behind-the-scenes sort of reality show that was created around that. That starts tonight. And then also next week, you have Drag Race Holland starting, which will be the Dutch version of Drag Race using the same format as the US, Canadian, and UK ones. So if you're a fan of drag, if you're a fan of Drag Race, this is just sort of like a joy, the perfect period to be around so you can watch a whole bunch of drag queens make utter fools of themselves, be fabulous, lip sync to some pretty cool stuff, and make some interesting choices on the runway. Yeah, there's just nonstop. Oh, and they also apparently just finished filming season 14?
13.
Or All-Star?
13.
13, that's what it was. They
I think
just
it's
finished filming 13. I said earlier 13 was 12. But
They're
yeah,
starting All Stars now.
starting All Stars now. So we will never be without Drag Race, at least in this year.
Oh no, there will
possibly
be a
next year.
drag drought.
There will be a drag route.
because
But it
they don't air it unless they expedite all this stuff, which who knows, maybe for like 6 months. It won't be until the new calendar year 2021. But yeah, there's so much Drag Race right now. It is both an amazing thing and a horrible thing.
So
to have
much.
that. Yeah.
But anyway, that's my wolf, is just too much Drag Race and all the shows that are coming up. So
Okay, let's go over to Brian. Brian, what is your wolf of the week?
So this just came out. It's a podcast made by Yahoo News, which I listen to their Skullduggery Politics podcast. Michael Isikoff is one of the journalists who, even if you don't know the name, you've probably read a piece of his. He's been doing some amazing journalism for a long time throughout DC and all kinds of stuff. But he's last year he did a series called Conspiracy Land, which is all about the death of Seth Rich and then the subsequent conspiracy theories related to it. That was excellent. They did a follow-on, not quite sequel. I mean, it's not really a sequel, but it's another unfortunate death. This time, the staff member who worked for Joe Scarborough.
yes,
And I hear Casadis. The name's not coming to me,
I
but
think it's Casitas, yeah.
because so what's special about this? It's only 3 episodes, 3 hours, real quick. You'll blow through it. They got Casadis's widower to sit down, and this is the first time he is sat down with any interviewer, had talked about any of this. And the conspiracy angle, of course, if you follow politics at all, Trump, and this is what's interesting. So Trump has been making this a thing more recently, but the actual scandal started back on the left. The Scarborough, of course, from Florida, was very right wing and had a lot of people on the left very, not happy with him. But Daily Kos and some of the other really kind of more progressive, sites at the time really made this an issue. And then it kind of morphed into through Catherine Harris and then now Trump this right wing kind of conspiracy story that is being shared. And the thing with Isikoff, what's really good is he winds it all together, kind of tells this the whole story, but then he kind of wraps it into the whole social media and should Twitter have the power, or should they take down tweets that are absolutely libelous or not? So, the widower in this case had asked Jack Dorsey, as the president of Twitter, hey, please take these down. Take down the president's tweets because they're not true. The police have proven this isn't true. You're just defaming my dead wife's name, blah, blah, blah. So it's a fascinating look at that whole story. It pretty much falls down the way you'd expect as far as the perspective. Mike Liskoff is a very fair and a very objective journalist, but in some of these cases, it's hard not to kind of make your opinion or analysis of the story, because I mean, again, no spoilers here. Every investigation that's happened with this murder, every investigation that's happened with this person's death have proven it's not a murder. So, anyway, called Conspiracy Land. It's on Yahoo News's platform, but if you just look up Conspiracy Land, you'll find it. And highly recommend it.
All right, cool. So in my wheelhouse. All right. For my Wolf of the Week, I'm going to go to a TV documentary. I can't even call it a TV documentary because I think there was initially intended to be theatrical, but COVID changes things. And it aired this past Monday, I believe, on A&E. And it's under their biography umbrella, but it was prepared as something different. And that is I Want My MTV, which covers the history of the inception of the channel. You get a lot of the key personnel that were involved in the creation of the precursor Pop Clips and then later the actual station MTV. People like Mike Nesmith and Bob Pittman and John Sykes. And it covers the history of MTV up to a certain point, up to when basically music did not become part of the equation. That's something I really find, it's a bit sad, but it's also just the way of things that there was a time in high school where we just, let's watch MTV. It wasn't around a program. It was just there. And, goes over, a lot of the key events, the initial VJs and, how they're, the departures by 1987 of all five of them, how that had changed things. Because that's another thing is like the VJs were, like incredibly popular. They were stars in their own right. And, at least living in the New York area, it wasn't surprising to see Alan Hunter or Martha Quinn emceeing a show or hosting a show or introducing acts. So there was a lot of that for me. And it goes over, various controversies, primarily their reluctance to play music by Black artists initially and how Billie Jean totally changed that. And it's about 2 hours long. It's a very quick view, and you also get some perspective by some of the artists, like Sting and Bret Michaels and some other people that you wouldn't associate with MTV that grew up with it, like Pagan and Sarah, and some of their perspectives of growing up with this mechanism in front of you and how that influenced you. So it's I watched it on demand on A&E, and I imagine it'll be on some other services fairly soon. But go check that out. I Want My MTV, or biography. I Want My. I think that's how it's actually mannered. All right, so we're almost at the 11:30 mark, which is a good time for us to say our goodnights. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears Podcast. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. If you want to listen to us, please do so by downloading us through iTunes. You can listen to us through Stitcher Radio and many of the other podcasting platforms. If you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. And please recommend for people, if they want something on in the background, nothing better than a YouTube with three very handsome gentlemen talking. So, think about that. Subscribing to our iTunes channel and subscribing to our YouTube channel, and leaving a review and giving us a little more prominence. Particular area. So until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Brian Pittard.
I'm Steve Morey.
You're going to hear a wolf and an explosion. We'll be back real soon. Take care, everybody.